Welcome back to Sunrise City. Well, now we're turning our attention to the states, the challenge they've got with generating alternative source of funding, as the Minister of Finance did speak about, talking to their representatives not long ago. But now we do have Adama Salihu, who is a management consultant. She's also the founder and CEO of Clayfields and Harrow Limited. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Well, to a lot of people, they were, a little excited, if not too many people, about the oil prices hitting an all-year high. We understand it's now, $59 per barrel. But then that advice that the minister did say that, look, the resources is dwindling, the revenue allocation to different states is dwindling rapidly, and states need to begin to seek alternative source of funding, perhaps increase their IGR. So if you compare, juxtapose that alongside what we've seen with the oil prices, do you think that the states should remove your focus from the oil and perhaps heed to the warnings from the finance minister?
Absolutely. I mean, the issue of world over, I mean, nobody relies on just one means of financing. So yes, this is the rhetoric we've talked about for the past how many decades. It's been oil, we need to diversify. I'm not sure the finance minister is saying anything new that we haven't heard before. Oil is a very volatile resource. So 1 minute is up, it just takes one shock, and then it goes crashing, it takes another shock, and then it goes. So it's not something you can say reliably, oh sure, I am absolutely sure that I'm going to get X amount of money, for the next amount of years. Because why is the oil prices going up recently? We all know it's part of it was the American disaster with the hurricane that happened, and it's affecting the Shackles oil and all that. So yes, do states need to diversify the source of revenue? That goes without asking. It's a yes, 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 all the way. However, I mean, like I said to a friend of mine yesterday, I said it's embarrassing that over 50 years after independence, we sit down here and we're still discussing the ability of states able to pay salaries. I mean, really, is that a topic we should be talking about? So you're saying, except I'm able to pay salaries, I can't even talk about capital projects. Because what is salaries? It's a recurring expenditure. If you can't even meet recurrent expenditure, then who's talking capital projects? So yes, to answer your question, yes, we need to diversify the economy. It's something we've said over and over and over again. I don't think it can be overemphasized. There's the excitement, oil is going up. Yes, oil is going up, and yes, all the projections are showing with all the, which we don't pray for, the Syrian thing, the North Korean thing with America, all those political dynamics, how do they play out on the oil price? So yes, but then for how long are we going to keep hoping for something to go wrong for the oil price to go up?
But what about the challenge that some of the states say that, look, it's not that easy. They didn't just get in there and sit on their hands and do nothing. They've got a huge challenge about the resources they get from the center, having to pay salaries, the bureaucracies that are all there. How do you suggest they handle some of those? Sack people, which will cause another hoopla?
Okay, without trying to say anything that sounds very controversial, let me touch on 1 or 2 or 3 of the debates that have been going on. Let's start with the minimum wage, because first is, what are my expense level? How am I able to meet my expense level? So before I answer your question, let's even start from, like you said, should we sack people? Like I said, you don't want to give an answer that sounds unnecessarily controversial. But let's not take away the fact that economically we're not the same and we're not equals. So you can't take some states and you can't just wake up and put a blanket minimum wage and tell people, hey, the minimum wage is 5,000 naira, without considering the state's ability to pay. So first and foremost, we've got that crisis that hasn't been fully resolved. So you put a minimum wage across the country.
Should we change that and allow states to determine how much they pay?
I am an advocate of a yes and a yes and a yes.
And Labour says no, because if that were to happen...
Well, I mean, the thing is, what's the point of owing salaries? I can't pay realistically. The data is there. You're telling me to pay what I can pay for.
But are you also concerned about the people whom you're giving the 18,000 naira? They can't even spend it because it's not even strong enough to buy the things they need.
Good. So you see, it's a multifaceted problem, and let's begin to pick it apart. So first and foremost, let's not take away the fact that are states able to pay this minimum wage across board? We need to tell ourselves some very, very hard truths. So first and foremost, let's not start delving into whether this 18,000 so-called is we will come to that, but are they able to pay? So which is better, that I'm able to pay you 10,000 naira and it's guaranteed, or I tell you it's 18,000 naira and I owe you for a year? Let's face it. So first and foremost, are they able to pay? So then you leave that out. And then the second thing, when people say we need to diversify, people make diversification look like you just snap your finger and then it's there. We forget that this is a long-term planning process. We keep saying we need to tell people to go into the productive sector of the economy, which is a yes. You don't start production sector just by saying, I need a production sector. There are enablers. We still have the many challenges of the infrastructure that helps these productive centers come together. So you have those challenges. So what does the state need to do is a lot. And I think the first thing the state needs to do, yes, the IGR is taken for granted. I don't even think we need to ask that question. Honestly speaking, it's not a question for discussion. The state needs to begin to seriously plan long term. But unfortunately, again, let me even answer the question, do states need to downsize? You know, it's always been, I've had a couple of discussions that people have said, one of the problems of Nigerian government or governance in Nigeria isn't even so much of one of the things we keep hearing is the corruption. Sometimes it's not the corruption as much as it's the wastages. So you man a department that 3 or 4 people can do the work and you have 25 people. So again, it's not just even the minimum wage, it's also that over-bloated workforce.
Because you want to have your people employed.
Okay.
So let's switch.
Okay.
Let's look at, diversification in another way. How about things or the environment for the private sector to come in and create the jobs? Do we have that kind of environment?
Thank you. So now, which was where I was going to. So when you said something about, oh, you need to have your people employed. Really, what does government do? Does government produce? Government governs. They regulates. Where's the production centers? Is in the production sector. So I have a 1 million people employable labor force, isn't it? It's not so much whether they enter government as a source of employment, but that they have employable means. There are people, there's employment out there for 1 million people. So whether that comes from what? Private sector, public sector, NGOs. The key thing is that there's 1 million jobs ready for what? 1 million employable population. So coming back to the point of, yes, your people need to be employed. Very, very true. Your people need to be employed. But that doesn't mean they have to be in the government.
But have we identified